help saving their seed and cleaning their seed. I'll help them with that, help getting new farmers started. So a lot of the people who are growing seed for Ujama, some of them have been doing it for a while, some of them are brand new. So they need help just knowing how to plant the stuff, how to clean it. So then the Organic Seed Alliance had a organic seed production cohort where they taught folks all the details of saving the seeds. It was 6 months. So I finished that a while ago. And I also did some seed work with an indigenous lady called Rowan White, who has an online class. Yes, please. So this is the Ujama Farming Alliance Cooperative. And I think there is a brochure or two about them. It's going around so people can look at it up close. So what else Ujama is trying to do is get Black folks, indigenous folks, other folks of color into seed farming, because it is an industry that's dominated by white folks, and they're not necessarily saving the seeds that we want saved. And there is money to be made in seed farming. You don't need that much space. And it's money that would come in, because for most farmers, they're getting their money during the spring and the summer. So this is money that would come in the winter after you send them your seed. And Ujama's having thank you, a convening next month. If anybody's interested, they can ask me. It's in Maryland, and you can get more info. So here we work with Spelman College. They have a garden. Spelman, actually, in World War II, their garden was big enough to feed the whole campus. Now it's like a tiny garden in the back of one of the buildings. And they used to be more ag-centered. It's not like that anymore, but some folks there, like Soraya right here, they're trying to bring that stuff back. So they are growing some seeds for Ujama. And then there's SAFON, which is the Southern African American Farmers Organic Network. And that started to get Black farmers organically certified. But then they found once they got certified, they still had issues with racism and access to resources. So then they started just doing more work with like getting folks together, having brigades where folks would go to one farm and do the work, or cooperatives where you could all sell to one group. So they also work in Florida. I think they're more. You want to talk about it? I just talked about it. You can go to the next one. So then there's the Heirloom Gardens Oral History Project that was through Princeton and Spelman this summer, where we went and talked to people who had a connection to seed saving or to foodways. And they were interviewed by students from Spelman and Princeton, and now it's in the archives at Spelman. So some of the food history can be saved via like oral things. It's not written down, it's not in a book, but people just telling their stories about their connections. We can go more to the seed stuff. This is us. We have 7 kids. This is us when we were in Oregon. And we started farming, how many years ago was it now? Maybe a dozen years ago. I don't know. He grew up, his family's from Mexico. So he grew up in Mexico, and his family had farms across the street. They had fresh cow's milk. I grew up in Oakland, in California, and my dad would be, I guess, what they call an urban farmer now. We just had chickens. He grew things from Jamaica, callaloo, and that kind of stuff. But he grew up on a farm in Jamaica before he moved to New York. So he was just trying to get a little bit back of that. But I paid no attention to that growing up. I was just a bookworm. I was not outside in the garden. It's not till I left that I missed gardening. So that's my dad, me when I was younger, and that's the seeds that he sent me. So the callaloo he used to grow, which is an amaranth, it's a green, Jamaican green, I couldn't find it anywhere in seed catalogs. And so I asked him where I could get some, and he said, I didn't realize that he saved seeds. So he sent me those seeds. Those are the first seeds I grew. This is some of what we do this is my partner, Kay. We sell culturally significant nursery starts. So for people who don't want to start the seeds, we grow the plants out and sell them in the spring and summer. So here we're doing a seed starting class. This is some sorrel or roselle that we're growing. That's our part of our front yard, which is just an example of edible landscaping, perennial landscaping. It's not just the row crops of annuals. It's a little bit, we don't have space for that. So we have 3 acres, and we want people to be able to grow like in subdivisions and HOAs, things that the HOA wouldn't realize is food, but you can still eat it. And that's just some of the things that's growing in the front.
The front yard is maybe about a third of an acre at max. So there's a lot of packed stuff. And like my wife said, we don't have rows per se, but there's like a lot of things growing in about a 5x5 space. You could have about 10 different plants growing, all supporting each other.
Those are some of the pictures. Yes.
List out some of those things and on that.
Let me read them. Okay.
Just some of them.
There's a plantain banana, turmeric. We have green, black, and blue turmeric this year. Lemongrass, taro, dahlias. And dahlias are actually native to Mexico. So this is some of his ancestors' food. They eat the tubers, which most people just grow dahlias because they're beautiful. The flowers are also edible. So you can make teas with the flowers. You can put them in salads. But the tubers is what we're going to dig up after it freezes. And you eat them like potatoes. Thyme, oregano, mugwort, pineapple sage, comfrey. Comfrey, we use it to cut. We put it in a bucket with water and we let it ferment until it smells like manure. And it's the liquid fertilizer. We dilute it and that's what we use. We don't bring in any fertilizer. Comfrey, COMFREY.
And as you can see, we have at the titles on top, we have annuals, we have trees, and we have perennials. And they support each other. When some plants are growing, they provide shade for the understory plants, and also the flowers bring in the pollinators. So there's a lot of things going on when you just see like a jungle. Besides looking beautiful, it is working together to actually bring about the best food possible.
And that jungle is how I remember like my grandma and my auntie's front yards being in Jamaica when we would visit. That's what I considered a garden. So now we got it. So this is over there in the corner where it says March. That's what we started this past March. We tilled it because there was a bunch of grubs in the ground. Oh my goodness. Our chickens were happy. And then we had a mountain of compost that we got through Food Well Alliance. Well, they will give compost to small farms. And then we started making the beds. There's trees in each of those beds, like citrus and figs, but they're all small. So we planted things around them to fill in while they grow up. And this is just through the months as the things grew. This is a lettuce. This is a Chinese lettuce that's like 6 feet tall.
And where is that?
This is in Georgia.
Okay.
I'm like,
Fairburn,
where are we?
Okay.
It's like south of Atlanta, yeah. Yeah. Agroecology. So we were trained in, when we first got interested, I think we first started getting interested in doing livestock, more animals, because we started researching what was going into our food, how the animals were being treated, what was in the milk and all this stuff. And I was like, we got to buy raw milk. And we couldn't afford it really. So we got sheep to milk sheep, and that went horribly. That was not a good one. So we got a miniature cow. That was a cow. What kind of cow was that? What kind of cow was that?
Dexter.
A Dexter. It was for meat and supposedly dairy, but she did not want to be milked. And this was when we were still in California, and we only had 3/4 of an acre. We had way too many animals. But the neighbors some of them enjoyed it, some of them didn't. But the neighbors also, when we started, we planted like 60 fruit trees there in the front yard. And the neighbors would come and stop and ask, what are you guys doing over here? And then a lot of people started planting in their front yards too. And now a neighbor calls and tells us that, oh, we all just shared your peach trees, because the person who bought the house is just one person. So they have people come and pick. There's peaches and pomegranates and
lemon,
olives, and there's all kind of trees. So he didn't want to leave that place because all the trees, but it's feeding people now, and that is why we do this. So why did I start talking about that? Oh, why we started. So then we moved to Oregon to get more land. And it was okay for the first couple of years, but Oregon was a state that was founded to be a white utopia. And it was on the books until 2001 that no black people were allowed. And it still very much feels like that. Even with the progressive folks, it feels like they want you to be free, but they don't want you to be their neighbor. So Oregon was tough. Even though we were there with the Permaculture Institute, we helped teach there. People came to the farm. We had 10 acres. We sold raw milk. The kids, my daughter got a cow for her 14th birthday, so she sold raw milk. We had heritage sheep and all these things, and it just got overwhelming, the racism. So we got our 3 acres in Georgia. We didn't go see it first. We just had a friend go and make sure the house was sound and that there was some land. And we bought it and drove across the country and saw it for the first time the day before we moved in. So we just needed to get out. But agroecology is something we feel like we couldn't have done there because it's very community involved. Like you share seeds, you share knowledge, you share the plants, you help each other. Like we were at the farmer's market over there. We ran the community booth where if people had extra apples or whatever, we would sell it for them. And we missed one meeting and they voted our booth out. So we got them to rescind it. We did all these things and then we're like, yeah, we're never coming back. Just, there's no community. If something really happened and we all needed to depend on each other, we wouldn't have been able to depend on them. So we left, and where we are now is we're much more able to do things like this. Like there's a lot of folks there. There's enough people in Atlanta and the metro that you can find people that have your same ideas, and planting things, having plants that are culturally significant to us. Yes. No.
I heard you just saying about the networking and community in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, you're selling your raw milk.
Yes.
Like, how would you go about selling your stuff if you didn't feel a sense of community?
So there were individuals for sure, but not enough to have a community.
Okay.
You know, if there's like 5 people. So for example, there was literal Nazis that bought a storefront or rented out a storefront on Main Street. And in the beginning, like 80 people got together and they're like, oh, we got to kick them out. This is horrible. And in a few weeks, maybe 3 weeks later, there were 7 of us left and 4 of those people were from our family. And it took us a year to push them out, but we were kind of on our own besides those other 3 people.
And the milk we would sell like to people at my school, people that I knew, you know, I had worked with them. They were kind of a little bit more open-minded, I would say. So establishing those relationships at work allowed me to be able to sell milk and also, you know, trade for honey.
His job was in a different town, the town that we were in.
Okay. Different. Yeah, okay.
We were in the rural area. He was in the city. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. It was.
Rough.
You can talk to any black person from the PNW, so Oregon, Washington, and they will have stories.
And the African American population in the state of Oregon is only 1.8 of the total population.
And it stays that way because folks leave, new folks come in, but everybody else is left. And when the last black auntie in our town moved, one of my sons was like, well, I guess there's no reason for us to stay here now because we were really the last ones. And we were the only people of color farming. So in that community, and we would do things, he did, what are those things called? Implicit bias workshops. And at the permaculture center there, he did do one. And then they called and told us that some of the people were offended, like they didn't want to talk about racism. So they weren't going to continue it. So they didn't even want to talk. It's not even that you don't know or there's an issue. People can change, but there was no discussion. They didn't want to grow. They wanted to stay. They did it to each other too. It wasn't just to us. So it was it was an interesting. I didn't expect it. You think you have things in common with people. You think you would think it shouldn't be based on that. So part of agroecology is not having to depend on outside sources so much, being able to share, but also being able to do stuff on your property and working to create forms of agriculture that are adapted to your ecosystem. So things that grow well on your property. But part of it, like with seed saving, if you continue to grow something, the same seed at your place for say 3 years, it starts to adapt to your microclimate and to your property and to your area, as opposed to buying in new seed every year that doesn't have.
And she said, didn't I say get an organic one? I said,
She could tell, huh?
And she says, look at this. So she cut out the one that I grew myself, and the seeds were so thick and solid. And then the one that we had organic, I opened up, the seeds were kind of transparent. So this organic?
Is when they picked it, yeah.
Yeah, so to me, I want to start getting more of my own seeds because I noticed at that moment, like, wow, what are we actually eating over there?
And even if it is organic, they pick that stuff when it's not ripe. So it's not even going to taste as good as it would when you literally go outside, take it inside when it's ready. It doesn't have to sit in the truck for 2 weeks, or I don't know how long those things sit in trucks. But yes, we didn't have any more tomatoes that were ripe to bring today for everybody to try saving seeds from. And you got tomatoes and pumpkin from the store, but the pumpkin was still green. So that means they cut it before it was ready to be cut off the vine. And the tomatoes, they always harvest them when they're green, so they're not going to have viable seed. But that's the other way. It's going to be hard to save seed from a tomato you get at the store, or even the pumpkins, apparently.
But we do get some organic stuff from the store that is not seed dependent for growth. Like sweet potatoes. Right?
Yeah.
It'll be an easier thing to grow.
And it does depend on the store. The Asian markets, they have a lot better produce. They pick it at closer to the ripening times usually. So seed saving is just an extension. A lot of farmers buy in their seeds every year, but it used to be that farmers were the ones that had the seeds. And in the beginning, I think the turn of the century, in the early 1900s, this government gave away free seeds to folks. And then a few companies formed. They bought up all the smaller people that were saving seeds, seed companies, and whittled down those varieties. So if you had, I think I have a slide here. Where's that slide? If you had like 400 different types of radishes before, now you have like 15. That's the one I'm on. That's fine. Yeah, we can just go from here. So this is the video. Is the video next? Go down.
I can't see.
What are you? What's?
I'm just trying to.
I'm trying to get to the slideshow. It's the glare. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I can't see through the.
Yeah. We've talked about this. We're going to skip this. So this is a slide about why not just the seed saving matters, but the knowledge from the cultures that goes with the seed saving. So pellagra was a disease that poor folks got in Italy and in the southeast here, Georgia, mostly Georgia. So corn was something that had been taken to Africa since before folks were enslaved. So they were already working with corn. But corn here, when folks here got onto it, they weren't paying attention to the indigenous people. So they didn't take on the cultural practices that went with corn. And one of the main practices is, can you show them the cal? Is soaking your corn in lime water. You boil it in lime water. You leave it overnight, you pour off the lime water, you rinse the corn, and then you dry it. And that's how tortillas are made. Like if you tried to just use wet corn to make tortillas, it wouldn't work. But doing the lime, it's called nixtamal. Doing it that way, it breaks down some of the inhibitors so you can get the niacin, you can get the vitamin B. But people were just eating corn, so the grits and all these things, they weren't nixtamal. So they didn't have access to those vitamins that indigenous people in Mexico had, that Native Americans had. Because Native Americans and Mexicans still eat a lot of corn. They were eating a lot of corn. They could survive on corn, but they also got the nutrients, the other nutrients in there. So people were getting pellagra, which it would kill them. They would get diarrhea. It's like the 4Ds. The 4Ds: diarrhea, dermatitis, dementia, and death.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And it was a major problem. And then it said anthropologists and food historians see that the unwillingness of the Spaniards to adopt indigenous foodways as the reason corn is mischaracterized as a low nutrition, you can put it there, as a low nutrition food. So, I mean, it started with the Spanish, right? If the Spanish had taken that on from the beginning, it would have still been passed. I think most people, did anybody know about doing corn with lime? Yeah.
Can I mention also something? Now, part of I think part of the problem is that lime is a mineral, right? I mean, some parrots, they eat some seeds and then they got to go and get some lime off a rock wall somewhere so that they can process the seeds that they eat, right? I'm thinking that the Spanish thinking that they were better. We're not about to put a rock in their food, and therefore thought we know how to do this better.
It's already good,
right? So like it's a sense of hubris from not learning from the indigenous people, or people that have grown with it for literally thousands of years. But then you come and you're like, oh, I think I'm going to leave this part out because this is too difficult, or this is too nasty, or this is too whatever, thinking that you're improving it, but you're actually not. And, I put on the notes that appropriation of somebody else's ways without really taking the time to learn it is like karma waiting to happen. Like the 4D. People gonna die.
except in this case, it was poor folks that died. So, it's, and then they tried to cover it up. They tried to do all these things. Let's see.
Finish you talking. I need the mic.
Okay, so sorry.
All right. Should be probably right.
Let's get closer to. So, polyculture. Anybody know what polyculture is, or what it sounds like? No. No guesses. It's planting things together, like you saw the pictures of our front yard. Not just the monocrop of having 1,000 acres of something, or however much land you have access to. When you have different crops close to each other, they can provide protection, or you can even have like a trap crop. Like if you plant nasturtiums that will attract a certain pest away from your greens or away from other things. So you can look up things that will do that so that you don't have to work as hard and you don't have to use pesticides to get rid of things. And then things like mulching your garden with wood chips. And you can get wood chips for free, chipdrop.com. Does that work in Florida? I don't know. They have it we had on the West Coast, we have it in Georgia. And they will literally just drop off wood chips. And that's in our front garden. What we did, we covered it with like 2 feet of wood chips for the first year and let it break down. And it turns into compost on its own. But let's get to the seed stuff. Okay, types of seed. So there's the GMO stuff, which most of us don't have access to. That's for big farmers. And that's where they manipulate the seeds themselves. They manipulate the DNA. So they change a lot. Hybrids is when they have 2 parents that they breed with. And so then when you try to save the seed from that, it's going to go back to one of those parents, one of those lines. It's not going to be the same thing that you grew. So if you grow that tomato because it's super sweet and it's black, if you save seed from that, it may be like a yellow, not so sweet tomato that next year. So that's, you can't really, you can and see what you get, but you don't know what you're going to get. Open pollinated and heirloom is when it's just been allowed It grows true to type. So they were allowed to pollinate openly. The bees, whatever was pollinating them. And the heirloom is just, it's like 50 years or older. And landrace is a whole nother group. Like, we are taking a class now on milpa gardens in Mexico, in Oaxaca. And they are still, they say this is a certain type of corn, but that corn changes. It keeps changing year to year because they keep selecting, like, we want the corn that's not so tall because the tall ones blow down in a hurricane. So they want to get it from the shortest corns that have the most ears. So every year they're selecting for the ones they want. So it's not necessarily the same seed that his great-great-grandfather grew, but it is from that seed. But it's not the exact thing. Where heirloom is going to be the exact thing that your great-great-great-great-great-grandma grew, which can be good, but also you can let it do its thing and cross with some other varieties so that you have something that's more adapted to your area. But that's easy to do if you just don't think about it. You just leave it there. And this is the century ago, how there were 483 radishes, and now there's 27 varieties. There was 285 varieties of cucumber, and now there's 16. Tomatoes, there was like 408, now there's 79, which is still a lot. Sweet corn, there's 307 types, now they sell mostly 12. So these things, a lot of these are lost, or there's a few select people who are still growing, like their ancestors did, who have them, but you don't have access to them. Okay, so this is a tomato flower. And you can't see down below. Hold on. Oh, that thing. So I wish you could see at the bottom. There's the pollen at the bottom. There's the style. It gets fertilized all the way down here. But tomatoes are interesting because they're a perfect flower. So they pollinate themselves. They don't need help from the bees. And usually they're closed at the top so the bees can't get in, and all the pollen, it goes down the style to the ovary there. But sometimes you have a little piece sticking out and a bee will get to it and you have a cross, but that's not the usual thing. So tomatoes can be easy to save seed from heirloom varieties because you don't have to worry about them getting cross-pollinated. This is just an example of, this is a Brassica oleracea from way back in the day before they were bred. And from this one plant, this wild plant, they bred different parts of it for different vegetables. So you get from that cabbage, Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi, kale for the leaves, broccoli for the flowers, and the cauliflower. So all of these plants are the same species, which unfortunately means that all of them will cross with each other. So if you want to save seeds from any of these, you got to make sure nothing else is going to flower at the same time. Brassica is a tough one. Did everybody get one of these on the table?
Everybody got one?
You can look and see. It'll tell you the name, what species it is, how it gets pollinated, insect or self-pollinated or wind-pollinated. And then isolation distances, if you want to save seed of one or more varieties. If you're just saving seed from one variety, if you just have one variety growing at your place and your neighbors don't have a different variety at their place, then you can save seed from it. And the minimum number of plants you'd want. But this is the minimum number of plants to keep them from having inbreeding depression. Like, they kind of get weak after a while if there's only like 2 plants that you're saving seed from. And then how long the seed usually lasts. So sulfurs. Self-pollinating ones, lettuce, peas, tomatoes, those are the easiest. And then beans, cowpeas, okra, peanuts, and rice. All of those are pretty good at self-pollinating where you're not going to get crosses. But after that, like cucurbits, squash. Has anybody grown two types of pumpkin, squash, zucchini, and then had them turn into something crazy the next year?
Yeah. Like a big pumpkin turning into a gourd, like a hard, you know.
Yeah.
Mexican gourd. It was like, well, that's cool, but not
But
edible.
it's not what I planted. And then things like corn, that's all the way on the other end. That needs like 2 miles distance if you want to save pure seed. But in that class, when they're mostly growing corn, they're growing corn and they are not 2 miles from their neighbors, huh? But they have big patches and they only collect corn seed from the corn inside. I think it's like 15 feet in.
15 rows.
15 rows in.
Yeah. So they have big hillsides planted with corn, and they walk in 15 plants, and then they harvest from those, from the center of their milpa, of their corn patch.
So that it has the least, and you can tell with corn, like if you're growing a white corn and a red corn, you can see on those kernels if it's crossed, unlike some other plants where you can't tell until you grow it out. So preventing cross-pollination, you can prevent it by species, by distance, by time, or by barrier. I keep forgetting I have to do both of these. So this is botany. The genus is always capitalized, and then these two together are the species of the plant. So like beets and Swiss chard, they're the same species. So they'll cross with each other. So you can look at the seed package and it'll tell you what species plant you're growing. Collards and cauliflower are both the same species, Brassica oleracea. So they will also cross. But collards and kale, they can be the same species, but for kale, they also have Brassica napus. And because this second name is changed, if you grow a collards and a kale that are these two, they won't cross because they're different species. So you could also grow this kale with any of these, with this one, collards or cauliflower, and they won't. And another example of two things that are different, the southern peas and the Asian long beans. They have a different variety, but they're also the same species. So you would need, for these, you need like 50 feet distance so that they don't cross. Squash. So if you want to grow squash, you could grow, so Curcubita, Pepo, Maxima, Moschata, 3 different species. Acorn squash, patty pan, zucchinis, they're all in Pepo. Maxima is like the Hubbards. Moschata is the butternuts. So you could grow one of each of these, and they're each a different species, and they won't cross. And then you can save the seeds. But if you grow 2 from this one, they're going to cross because they depend on the insects for pollination. Okay. So this is a squash plant. That's the male flower. Can you tell the difference between the male flower and the female flower there? What's the difference? Yeah, the ovary. This is the ovary right here. And the flower's not yet open. But once the male flowers, if you've ever grown squash, you notice you get a whole bunch of flowers and no like little squash babies coming up. Because the male flowers open first, they start to attract. They're like telling the insects, we're here. We're going to be ready soon. And then the females start to open up. Those insects will go to the male flower first and then the female flower. If they don't, you'll see this just fall off. Anybody see their squash just fall off? Like it just turns brown and dies. It just didn't get pollinated in time. So there you can see again, those are the male flowers. And the female flowers, that's not the ovary anymore. That's now the fruit. And this is a picture of somebody whose zucchinis accidentally crossed. So you can see the fruit. Wow. This is something you can do if you actually want to grow a couple of the same species and you want to save the seeds. The night before you can tell when the flower is going to open up. And the night before it opens up, you can put a bag over the female flower before it opens up. In the morning, when the male flower, you get the male flower, I'm sorry.
You can use bags that are mesh-like. You can buy these, but very easily accessible are the paper bags. Like, go to the corner store and get a paper bag with a drink or something.
Well, but the thing with the mesh bags also is if it leans against the flower, the insects will still try
Wow.
to pollinate. Yeah. So you can put a bag over it. In the morning, you break off the petals of the male flower and just take the middle part and you do it for it. And then you have to put the bag back over until you see the ovary actually start to turn into a fruit. It just takes a couple days. And then you take the bag off and you'll be good. Well, it's when the flower falls off. Once the flower falls off, it can't be pollinated by anything else. Other crops that you could try that with are melons, cucumbers, watermelons. And this is another way to isolate crops. You could put a whole cage around it, which I haven't done because that takes a lot. But you still have to get in there and pollinate it yourself. So these are actual flowers, the male flower of the corn.
Yes, this is once they're ripe. These are very ripe. You want to hold on to that one? And
Yeah,
usually
I mean, we don't
when we
have to
pick them,
smash it. We can
they're
just cut
also
it
green.
open.
But this is right when you want to save them for seed.
Maybe not just for this, but
Bed.
take us through what exactly you're doing right now.
Okay.
Again.
Again. Yes.
You want me to cut something?
Can you cut this in half?
Yes, ma'am.
So-
Let me get to that.
What?
I'm going to cut it.
So we're doing the wet seeded processing. When you take these things out,
More in there.
you have to add water. Usually you let them sit and ferment for a day or two, but you can also, like for the eggplant, we're just going to rinse to get off all the gunk until there's just seeds left.
So explain to us what makes it a
Thank you,
wet seed process.
So when
Water.
so things like beans, when they dry, they're crunchy. So they're already dry. These kind of things, when you open it up and it's damp inside, you're going to process it wet. Zucchini, the cucumber, the squash, the tomatillos, the eggplant, things like peppers can be wet or dry processed. So you could cut open the peppers and scrape out the seeds and just dry them. But they don't have that inhibitor. Tomatoes have the inhibitor over their seeds where you have to let them soak and ferment.
Separate them.
Step one is what? Step one is what? What's happening?
Let the fruit stay on there until it gets ugly.
Get some water up in here.
And then take it off. You can let it sit some more until it almost rots. And then you cut it open, you smash it open, you can put it in the blender. Add more water. When you pour it off, I'm gonna keep going with that. But when you pour off the water, usually you let it settle for a little bit, but usually the seeds that float up to the top, they're not gonna germinate and grow for you anyway. The ones that sink to the bottom, those are the ones that are gonna grow.
Okay.
So
But you said that they you can put them in the blender.
you can put it. That would be more for eggplants and tomatoes that have the smaller seeds. These might actually get cut up. Yeah, these I wouldn't put in the
That stuff is
blender.
totally
People
edible.
usually just mash these. Even for the
Usually you
tomatoes,
wanna,
you can just cut them in half and squeeze them.
Put it in a salsa or something.
And these, yeah, you could just
Like to eat it.
you could just squeeze these out.
Raw like that, I think it might be a little bit too acidic.
Those would be harder just to squeeze out, right? They're like more complicated.
To get all the stuff.
You can already see there's some seed in there that you know is not going to grow. It's just teeny.
Yeah, we just want to separate the.
You just pour that. So we're going to add this to a jar and see what floats.
How long do you soak in the water to get that?
Tomatoes need the longest. It's like 20. It's till they get that. I'll show you. I'll go back. That white film of mold. Yeah, depending on how warm it is. If it's really warm, it'll go short. You just leave them on your kitchen counter. People, when they're doing a lot, they have a whole bucket of
We're gonna have to use one of these
moldy, filmy stuff. You got to keep an eye on it. You don't want it to go too far.
So what is the most common
How long do
seed
you
that
have to
people
let it ferment?
reseed? The most common
For these,
vegetable fruit that people reseed.
I think it's going to be several days, at least 3 days.
She said to
That's a
him,
good question. In terms of
Yeah.
just falling on the ground or them actually trying to
You
save
remove
the
the
seed?
water, and then
Maybe.
you'll just have the seeds.
Yeah.
Right.
It depends
When
on
they
where
get
you
there.
are, I think, and what people they are eating.
Yeah. So
Right.
like, if I can get a seed here. With the tomato seeds, they're easier
Spitting
to
out those
tell
watermelon seeds.
because they have
Where
like
they
that
grow.
little mucus membrane that it has.
In the spring,
Yeah.
you know,
With the tomatillos, I think it's
Yep.
something similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it
For
has
other
like a
people,
little
it was
mucus
maybe
film.
collards.
You want to get rid of that.
So they had the heirloom collards project, where
you
people
want to
went
get rid of
around and literally on back roads in the South and pulled over wherever they saw collard plants growing, and they went and asked. This was in the 70s. Was it an heirloom variety that their family had been growing? Do they want to share the seeds? I think they got 70 different varieties. And so then they're growing them out. The Heirloom College
Yeah.
Project, they're asking people to help grow
These
them
are
out
from our house.
so they can have enough to save seed and start sharing it back into the community
We also
so
work
folks can grow
with
those
another farm
varieties.
that's maybe
So
about 20
collards
miles
must
away
have
from
been
us, and we also
big
share
one.
the seeds because they're
Well, people wanted the collards that their
just to keep
family
the
had,
diversity
the taste they were used to,
increasing.
right?
and in that case, maybe turn up the mustards to go along with
Exactly. Exactly. If you had one that you liked, you didn't want to let that go because maybe your neighbor didn't have one that you liked.
yeah.
Okay, let's get water.
Hey, babe.
Hey.
So these tomatillo seeds.
Oh, those are beautiful.
Strain them. Strain them
You
out.
put them. Is something going to the bottom?
Yeah,
Put them in the jar so it's easier to see.
So do I take the water out? Because there's more water than is going to fit in the jar.
What about those cups there?
Let's try a cup.
There are participants. They're hers. Yeah,
Where are the cups?
free drinks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Purple
Let's put some of this in there.
tomato aid. I'm just gonna. Yeah, should be. Ooh, excuse me.
Yeah, we're trying to get. No, the seeds at the bottom are the good ones. The seeds that float, but we have to deal with that gunk too. You see all the seeds at the bottom?
So
And you see the ones at the top? Do they look different than the ones at the bottom?
Yeah, they do.
They do.
They do.
What's the difference?
It looks like those are a little bit more pale.
Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that are so
you
light.
see, these
that
are not the good ones because they're floating at the top.
And then the ones at the bottom have a little bit more.
The ones that stayed at the bottom
Right.
are still in the bucket. We're gonna put
Those are
those
the
in that
ones that
little
we're
jar
going
right
to
there.
save.
Okay. Okay.
Can you see the difference between the ones at the bottom and the ones on the top? Yeah. We can just pass it around. Do the next one.
They're the ones that are making.
No, those are the ones that are going to get poured off with the gunk. The ones that stick to the bottom are heavy enough.
If you
There's
put
more
them
water.
where you
So
store
we're
them,
going to try these
if you store them in a freezer, they'll keep from
after you
years.
dry them.
After they've been dried thoroughly, they'll keep for years. If you just keep them in a cool, dry place, they can last a couple of years. But if they're in the freezer,
Yes.
for like 5-6 years.
It can start to break them down. Yeah. So it's better to not let it go more than a few days. So you can see like these, all of them are floating right now because they have that film over them, that germination inhibitor. So you would need to let these sit
Oh, thank you.
till it starts to molt. Yeah. So maybe 24 hours, yeah. If it's warm. 24 hours, and then they'll start to sink down. Thank you. So we got to pour that out. Where do you want eggplant growing?
Hey, but can you repeat how long they need to ferment to get the little slimy thing off?
At least 24 hours.
Okay.
But till there's let me just put
White
that
film?
slide on.
The white film on there?
Mm-hmm. Can you see that white film on top?
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for.
What's
It'll
that?
be a white film, and the
It's
other
not.
seeds.
Okay.
It's a conspiracy.
Is that tomatoes?
That's tomatoes.
Okay.
And this is the clean ones that were at the bottom. So you pour it off, you add more water, and you keep pouring it off till you just have the clean seeds. And those seeds won't be, you know, those seeds, when you try to pick them up, they jump out of your hand. You can't hold on to them. Yep. Those will stick to you then. And you can put them in a coffee filter and write the name of the seeds on there, and then you put it in front of a box fan or any kind of fan. Like we have,
You drive.
there's a little USB fan, there's, you know, whatever fan you have to dry them for a day or two. Those all sank. It looks like you could pour out.
Yeah, the ones that when I poured out the water, those were the ones that didn't make it. They're gonna have a
So
lot
these
of
look like
seeds
they
here
already
next year.
sank down to the bottom.
What is
Like they
this?
wouldn't have to go that long if you want to pass them around.
Smells like lavender or something like that.
Yeah, it smells nice.
Okay.
Nice lavender patch here next year.
Anybody have questions? And we can talk about it again at the end. No? So, yes.
So why does it have to go?
It dries.
The mold, the fermenting
Yeah, you
is
gotta
what
wait for
gets
it to
rid of
dry
that
in order to
film
get it
that's
good.
on each individual seed that would keep it from growing again.
No, and that's the difference between the wet. and
Not
the
that
dry
it would
seeds.
never grow again, but it would need
This is
to
not
sit in
ready.
the ground and start
These are
to,
ready.
not mold, but ferment on its own. Like you can't just,
and we brought
when you
these
have
so
tomatoes
could
that are
see,
split or
sometimes
ugly,
this
have you ever
happens,
just thrown them?
and the
And had
mold
some
will rot.
tomatoes growing there?
So this
Like,
will not be-
but that tomato molds and gets heckin' nasty
Yeah,
before the next year. So it ferments on its own and does the work for you. So you can garden like that if you want to. That's what I do sometimes. Just throw it next year. Every year I have tomatoes because I'm not saving seeds from tomatoes. So whatever tomato grows, I enjoy it. And then there'll be a bunch of them, and I just pluck them out and put them where I want them to be. That's the lazy garden.
Do you know if things that are dry, processed or dry seeds,
Mhm.
do they also have that, like, the germination inhibitor? Or no? 'Cause it's
No.
drying down already.
Usually, if it dries down, it could be that the seed is just not fully formed. Like if you pick the okra when it was still soft, you're not going to be able to. Maybe it has an inhibitor on it then, but it's really just not even mature.
Right.
So no, yeah, they're different.
there's also some specific seeds like that animals eat. That the seed needs to go through the digestive tract of that animal in order
And
for it to be
ferment.
able to
Yeah.
to grow.
Right.
So you will have dry seeds that need to go through a process to pass through the digestive system
Right.
to be able to grow.
Right.
Or sometimes fire.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times fire.
There's certain seeds that won't grow without fire.
Or freeze, right? The acacia tree, I think, is one of those
In the
things.
desert.
Pines, yeah. A lot of desert plants.
And they're viable. They stay just dormant for like 30 years waiting for that fire to come.
And or like the 100-year flood, right? Like those plants that are native to this region, they know this region better than we do, right? So they will come up. Like we cleared a small patch in our place, and we
Those
didn't have any
pine
pop
trees.
up. We didn't have any the trees that we wanted that
The
were native.
natives.
And as soon as they had a little bit of sun and space, they started popping out. We were like, hey,
It's just all natives back there now.
Yeah.
I don't know how that place was a farm like 60 years ago. So I don't know how long those seeds have been there waiting.
Yeah.
For like
decade longer than I've been alive. Yes, sir.
Seeds are last a long time.
Yes.
mhm.
If anybody ever saw a house caught a fire and burnt down,
Mm-hmm.
you pass there 6 months, you'll see growing up. Seeds growing up in weeds.
Right.
Yep.
And then through that fire.
Right.
So they're like,
And there's also like seeds that people have found in caves that are like literally thousands of years old, and they take them to the lab and they plant them and pop, there it is.
In a
You have
clay
another
pot.
date palm that was like around 30,000 years ago when people weren't even supposed to be alive. So like these things, when he's saying seeds will last, there's a plan for everything. It's not our plan. But if we get out the way,
Okay.
that plant will manifest.
So, they'll make it seem like it's super hard to save your own seeds. And that's just, if these seeds will continue on their own, even without us, a lot of them. But there are ways to make it easy for us, yeah?
For seeds that would need like flooding or fire or like some type of special condition.
Right.
In order for them to, with environmental factors as they are now, like climate change and things like that, like maybe those species of animals aren't at right population size or something. What are things we can do to rectify or kind of help with that situation? Or is that just, we can't really use that variety until environmental conditions?
No, I mean, you can find out and make those conditions. Like pecans, you soak them for 24 hours. Or like comfrey, when I grew up from seed. My friend tried growing it from seed and nothing worked. And then we looked somewhere and they said to put it in water in the fridge. So it needs to be cold and wet for like 2 days. And all of them grew. So it's just finding what those right conditions are for each of them. We can help with probably all these seeds. You can literally burn seeds. Or, cut off the outer part to get it to grow. Because that's usually what the fire does, is it burns the outer shell. So that the inner seed, and people do these things where they do, what else, clay? They do clay balls.
Japanese.
Filled with seeds. Like,
the Japanese,
what's his name?
I'm going to mess up the name.
There's a Japanese farmer that used to try to reforest Fukuoka by putting all kind of tree and all these different seeds in balls of clay, dried clay, and they would just go out and throw them. And slowly the clay would break down and things would start to grow. And whatever needs to grow is going to be the one that does grow.
Right. Survival of the right seed conditions. Not the fittest, just right.
Invasives are a thing, though.
Right.
So, okay. So the dry processing, if the seed is picked when it's dry or left to dry, as opposed to curing like these, that's called curing with those eggplants, then it's dry process. So for dry processing, like this okra, let me just open it up and see. There, you're going to have the seeds that are not ready. If you want to pass it around. Now this one, I also picked green, but later on, and you see it's starting to dry on its own. So I'm going to sacrifice it and see what it looks like. And those seeds are black inside. So you can, some of these things, there is a certain point, especially for okra, when you feel it and it's like crunchy inside, you can't pick it, especially if like you're going to have a freeze or something and you're going to lose all those things. You can cut it off and put it in front of a fan to dry, and it could continue. You take the risk though. Leaving it on the plant is ideal. So these, the risk is that you won't get the seed out of it. Like this one, look, this one is like open. So you see the white in there? It's probably not going to turn black. When they're white like this, they're not fully mature and they won't grow the next year.
And it can mold. Bug can get in there and eat them all.
Anybody want to see?
So that's some of the risk. Sí, señora.
So,
you gotta want the black seed ready. Those ready with the black.
The black ones are black and hard. Those are ready.
Even if the outer hull is still green, if the seeds are black.
So some of the dry seeds.
¿Cuáles quieres? Which one?
Maybe they can do a corn.
Corn?
Oh, that one. The
bean?
that
Chard?
one, yeah. And the beans. But we need to put it into something.
You want a basket?
There they are. These baskets right here.
I got a question.
Yes.
Because, I save seeds and I save seeds and I got them in plenty, but I don't even know that I have them. It always comes to the point of, this is the right time to plant. Because some things are good in spring, some things are good.
Right.
I don't know if I'm getting ahead of you, but I figure I throw the question out there. You can address it.
That's the whole next thing. Yeah, when to plant different things.
Yes.
And that depends on what area you're into.
Right.
And what
The planting
you're right
zone.
here? So what kind of things are you trying to plant? Like, are you planting things right now?
Okra, and there is roselle, and native plants.
Yeah.
So, like I created some black-eyed Susan last weekend, and I have them in a cup in the car.
Right.
And I thought, well, do I just go around and make a hole and put them in there and wait? Or do you really have to start to
You would probably start them in early spring so that they have enough time to grow. So I don't know here, do you get hard frost?
Sometimes it can go in the
If they're not, then
So
no.
what happens to that seed that is underground? Will it go away or?
If it starts to grow, then if it's not big enough by the time the frost comes, then it's just going to die. But if it doesn't grow, like you wouldn't want to plant it right now because it's going to want to grow because it's so nice.
Okay.
And then if you
So
get a
you'll
frost
hang
in a
on to
month,
them until next spring?
you hang on to them till you can start plants in winter if you have a place inside to grow them. But you look at your zone, you can look at your, like I should ask people who are here. There should be the local university that has like a chart. Like I have an example there. They have a chart of when to grow what crops. They'll tell you like what month. They tell you when the frost date is, when the last frost date is, and when you can start planting stuff out. So that's really like specific based on where you are.
Or be able to direct you.
To tell you specifically when, you can plant stuff. Okay. So we're just putting out some of the dry seeded stuff, including these. Anybody? This is what's it called? Bottle gourd. And we grew them this year because we have squash vine borers in our area and we cannot grow certain pumpkins except the moschata variety. And zucchinis, we love zucchinis, but they got them. We only got one zucchini. These start out green and smaller, and when you can still dent them with your fingernail, you can eat them just like zucchini. They're a West African variety, but they've been grown in Italy since like the 1400s. But you can feel the weight difference. This is actually not a loofah. This is a gourd. It's a bottle gourd. Yes.
You grow these here in the United States?
Yeah, I grew them in Georgia, and they took no work. We didn't fertilize them. We didn't do anything for them. Yes, we have a cattle panel.
And it's seeds on.
And then see how heavy the
wet one.
This one hasn't dried yet.
So you're saying it's ready to get the seeds out of?
The dry ones are ready, and we brought a saw.
When they're young.
Let me get the saw.
When they're young.
But this ain't young here.
It's youngish. It's youngish.
Younger, yeah.
And it tastes like once you cut it open.
What does it taste like, baby?
It's like a zucchini.
Kind of like it's not a zucchini.
It doesn't have a strong taste.
To me, it tastes like chayote. What do you call that in English?
Chayote.
Chayote. Chayote.
Chayote. It grows on a vine.
It's also.
Is it?
It's a Mexican pear. But it's not a pear.
They call it chocho in Jamaica. I don't even know what. It must be in the. I don't know what family that's in. Yeah. Yeah, they can grow here.
It will grow here.
If that can grow here, those can grow here. Oh, really?
Never knew that.
So these, when they're young, they make good zucchini replacement. And since it's on a trellis, it doesn't take up really any
It's like a hog panel.
And we used it to block out the
fence.
street.
Yeah, it's got squares. It's about 16 by 4.
Not till it's big.
No,
you cut it off when they're big.
We put this plant on it so it can grow down.
They start to
like
turn
it's a vine. When the fruit grows
and
on
then you
there,
cut them
it'll
open.
hang down.
Now the
and it'll
people
be
who got
straight like this.
Seeds,
when it's not straight, it'll be curved
had one
like
of
that
those
because it's too close to the
like
ground.
this. They hadn't cut it open. It was 20 years old. It keeps the seeds fresh in there. It's like its own seed-saving vessel.
open is that almost.
Yes, that's what we're gonna do is cut that open and see what it looks like. I don't know yet.
Oh, chayote is cucurbit.
It is a cucurbit. Yeah, okay. So for dry seed processing, the first part is usually threshing. I'm gonna show you guys a video. Threshing, which is just breaking apart.
For this,
Don't
you can
make it
use
a
my
bucket.
knife, but
Y'all
that has
just
to be
have
big
your
and sharp.
own thing, huh?
¿Qué va a
Oh,
hacer?
these are all
Raw wet. I can dry them.
I do, yeah.
right. I'm gonna dump this out, babe.
I got this.
No. Let's just take the stuff out of here. They can thresh it into here.
Okay.
It's easy. Can you just show the threshing as I do it? You
Sure.
smack it against it. He's gonna thresh it while I talk. So this, let me let them finish their conversation.
Yeah.
Huh? Daniel's going to show you what threshing is. That's the first part of dry seeds, depending on how they are. Is just separating the seeds. This is cilantro, the seed from the plant. That's cilantro, yeah.
Once it's dry, coriander. Yeah.
Now it's
Goes up
called
like this.
coriander. Now that it's dry.
So you cut it when it's starting to turn brown, but it's still a little bit flexible, so it can fit in your bag, right? And
You smack it against there.
you can crush it a little bit, and there's a lot of seeds coming. You probably have a little parsnip or
Cilantro for us.
patch over here next year. And just by doing that, you can see how many seeds have already come out. Now, those seeds are like little packages because inside of those are actually the seeds. The seeds are a lot smaller than that.
Would you store them like that, or would you break them open and then store them?
Use them like this.
Like that. Store them like that.
She's allergic to slime.
Oh. Yeah.
Yes, this is from that. And then later on they call it coriander. I keep forgetting I have this.
Take it, and then chipmunks. Yeah. I don't know about lizards.
So the goal with your seeds is to get them clean. And there's different ways. Dry. So like she was asking with the okra, some of those would still be a little damp. You can still take them out, but you would want them to be all the way dry before you put them in a jar or they're mold. I've done that before where I thought beans were dry a while ago. And I had so many, I had a half-gallon jar. And I came back a week later and it was all molded. And that's when I thought, I should probably look at do this properly because that's a lot.
Really make sure that they are dry.
That's what we're going to go over.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Can you just spread them out?
You spread them out. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Couldn't you just have spread them out on a paper and let them dry?
You do, yes, like in front of a fan. But different seeds are going to dry at different rates, like the small ones. They dry a lot quicker. It's easy with beans, which I should have done at the time, is this one you can still feel some give. But if you put it on the ground and take a hammer to it, it should shatter and not just dent. But you can feel, I can dent this right now. This needs more drying. So it depends on the seeds.
You want dry seeds? Dry beans?
Me?
No.
Okay,
So,
I have one more question.
yes.
So the drying, saving the seeds is dry. Have you guys ever heard of a desiccator?
Yeah, that's what we're going to go over now. Is that box
Would it
behind?
be safe to store in there, or like answer the seed and how much it needs to be saved, I guess?
So there is this thing. There are these mini dehumidifiers. This is a rechargeable dehumidifier. You plug it in and it gets it warm and dries out. There are silica beads in here.
It was 77 and 44% humidity. Right now it's 46 and 78. So as soon as we open up the bucket, it started getting more humid. Obviously, the environment and the heat.
So you can get, these are like $3 on Amazon. The what's it called? Hygrometer. But this one also has a temperature. So we dry them in front of the fans, and then when they seem like they're dry, I'll put them in a bag like this, and put them in the bucket. And I put this in there to take note of like what temperature and humidity it is before, and stick this in there. And last time I did it, it got it down to, like right now it's 49% humidity. It got it down to, I think, 35. And you would want your seeds to be below 40% humidity before you put them in the jar. When you open this up, if you open this up to take them out and it's at 30% humidity, you would put it direct in the jar. Because it's going to be at the last humidity that it was exposed to, right? And then there's that tape. Where is that tape go? Where'd that box go?
I didn't see that tape. I think it might be on the...
There's this tape that detects how much humidity there is in the air. And you can tear off a piece. Oh, it's in this jar here. Where's that? These jar. You can tear off a piece. It's in here somewhere. Right now it's blue. And that means that it's dry. It'll turn pink if it gets damp inside of this jar. Oh, I have it somewhere. Melissa Disa, who's in North Florida, she sent it to me. That's what they use for when they're storing it, to make sure. These are dry, right? So I don't want to leave it off.
So if you had that in there, that would have helped your beans? Yeah.
I would have known that my beans were still damp. It wouldn't have drawn the humidity out of it, but I would have known that I need to take them out and put them back in front of the fan. But this thing that we just put in here, that would have sucked the humidity out and the moisture out of them. I put the seeds just inside of here in a bag.
You can take a picture of it.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be in a bag that's breathable. Like it could be in a paper bag. It could be even in a jar with the top open. And it'll just take all the humidity that's in this bucket. You close it all the way.
Airtight. Yes, ma'am. I don't know.
Oh. So there's also fancy things like this.
I think it's ever dry.
Fancy. This is a box that comes with a built-in hygrometer.
Yep.
So you can see the temperature and the humidity. That's inside the box. And inside of here, there are... Yes. I know, right?
Yeah.
Oh, here's the tape.
Yeah.
So this is that tape that you would put. And it tells you blue is 20%. I'll pass this around. And in here is different kinds of beads. They have silica beads. They have clay beads. And these will also suck up moisture. Like you would put an equal amount by weight of the beads to whatever seeds you have. So you would weigh your seeds. You put an equal amount of these beads in the jar. And then you take them out after a couple of weeks. Put this in there to see if it took out enough moisture. And then they can be stored. I'm going to pass this around. Okay. So here in the Southeast is really humid. So making sure it has low humidity is like a big deal.
See the humidity right there. It's the clay balls.
Let's
the
see.
tape.
So you want to get them down, like 35% humidity before you store them. So you can use one of those to tell, like whatever seeds you're ready to put in jars, you can put them in here first and get them down to the right humidity. And then they need to be stored in a cool place. So if you put them in a sealed jar, you guys have places you can think of on your property that are cool, dry.
It don't matter, just the weight by weight.
So you would just scoop all the stuff by weight.
Does it get humid and hot in the shade? Or it's pretty cool? Or both? Like shaded?
Up on the bead, it's
Yes.
In a closet somewhere?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, that's an interesting container. It came with the container?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
yeah. North side of your house usually is coolest. If there's a closet on the north side. I know our bedroom's on the north side and it's always cold.
Yeah, man.
Or if you're doing it towards the end of the season and it's about to be fall and winter, you could put it in the garage, in the freezer, or in a spot that's not close to like
humidity detector right there.
You can put it in the freezer, or you can just put it in the garage in a dark place. Like if you have a cabinet.
If the tape stays blue, yeah.
And if it's cool in the garage. Do people have basements?
I know.
I use it for
Okay.
Right, okay. Yeah.
So that's out. And then dark. Like you can have it in a glass jar so you can see that tape, but then you want that to be in a cabinet. Or even if you store them in a bucket. Like you could put the jars in the bucket and close it.
The darker the better.
So that's just those. The Everdry. That's from Amazon, the Amazon picture and the hygrometer. And that Everdry thing, that was like $15. So it's, somebody else told me they had a walk-in closet with no windows, and they put a dehumidifier in there and dried their seeds in there just to keep the humidity down while they were drying it. So different ways, because not everybody has access to these things on Amazon. Different ways people do it is dry it outside, but not necessarily in the sun. And they check it for the insects first. And then when you do put it in a container, you can put that cal, that lime there, that for pests. You can put
Clay.
People are putting clay. So these are clay beads, right? People will just put straight clay, powdered clay, to absorb the moisture and ash. And ash. Ash is a good one for the moisture and the bugs.
Yeah.
Wood ash.
Why would you want to put that in the same place as the seed?
You're not eating those seeds. Those seeds are for growing.
Yeah.
And the ash is going to keep it from getting moist again. It'll absorb the moisture. And from the pest eating your...
So it wouldn't mess up like the seed growing process?
No, it doesn't mess up the seed growing process. Like the germination later, it doesn't mess with that. So this is a video with some ladies in Central Africa doing those kind of drying methods with just whatever they have handy, but now they are doing the scientific research to make it available.
This is the story of Kenyan farmers who are upholding traditional seed preservation methods used by over 30 ethnic tribes in Kenya. These are tried and tested practices that have continued to protect indigenous seeds through locally available materials. In Kakamega County, this farmer has been using various methods.
Una preserve mbegu ikae so that usishinde ukienda sokoni kununua mbegu every season. Naenda kwa mti ya popo, unatoa hii, unaikausha vizuri, unakuja unaichoma.
That's ash.
Cow dung ash.
The first one was just wood ash. This is cow dung ash.
Nitaenda tu hapo kwa nini ya ng'ombe, nitoe samadi, nitengeneze. I'm 100% sure kwamba hii mbegu nikipanda itamea. Na kama haitamea nitafuatilia nijue ni kwa nini haijamea.
For this farmer in Vihiga County, fine dust from locally made bricks works wonders.
Unachukua brick ambayo imeiva vizuri kabisa, unaibonda, unaishaga mpaka ikuwe laini kama unga. Ikishakuwa laini kama unga, so unaweza changanya na mbegu zako na ukaweka. Hata ikimaliza miaka 10, mbegu zako ziko safe.
Also in Vihiga, Tihonia diversifolia goes a long way in protecting local maize varieties from pests.
Huwa nachukua hii Tihonia leaves.
Tithonia is a Mexican sunflower. So it's easy to get over here, it should be.
Na katakata, na igonga, na iweka ndani ya maji for some minutes. Ili ile maji ishike ikue kwa kabisa. Alafu nachukua mbegu zangu.
She's going to put her corn seed and wash the seed in there and then dry it.
Kabisa na iosha, inarudi na ichukua na anika kwa gunia. Hii local preservation yangu inachukua more than 5 years. Hauwezi pata imekuliwa.
Diatomite ash from the
diatomaceous earth
in Nakuru has also proven helpful for farmers.
Unakuja unaipiga, alafu sasa hiyo mawe unaanza kucrush ndio iwe unga. Kichanganya kwa mbegu inakaa karibu hata miaka 5 kwa sababu hiyo jivu inazuia wadudu kuja kudunga hiyo mbegu.
Smoking over the fireplace remains one of the most preferred seed preservation methods for farmers across the country.
Mimi kama mama sasa mwenyewe mimi najiwekea mbegu mise mbegu. Ashabu tu nakuuliza analimia shamba.
Having healthy seeds at their convenience helps these farmers to plant on time when the rains come. At Seed Savers Network, we're on a mission to conserve agrobiodiversity by strengthening communities' access to seed, thus enhancing food sovereignty.
Seed is something mostly that is ignored, and the basis of any agriculture is seed. So when we are working with farmers on best practices of agroecology farming.
However, these indigenous seed preservation methods are at risk of dying out due to dependence on agrochemicals and biopiracy.
The law requires that if anyone uses traditional knowledge, either art, procedures, all those are protected. They should compensate the communities that originally the traditional knowledge came from.
As Seed Savers Network, we continue to protect the smallholder farmers' right to seed nationally through environmentally safe methods, working with the National Gene Bank to test these methods.
And that is why in this project that we were focusing on traditional seed preservation methods is very important. That is safeguarded so that nobody can patent even the procedure and what they are doing and make it so hard for other farmers or even other actors to use it.
And in Kenya, it's technically illegal for the farmers to save their seeds, to save and share.
Is it illegal?
Yeah. So even though it's in the Constitution that they have the right to do it, the current law says that they can't do it. And so they have what they call seed education. And they just say, if they're giving farmers seed, they say, I'm giving this to you to eat, these wheat seeds. But they know that they're going to go and plant them. And they haven't arrested anybody yet because the person who was talking to us said like 80% of the small farmers save and share their seeds. But they are trying to they did make it illegal.
Is that because there's a GMO?
That's a GMO, yeah.
And Monsanto usually, it's in the IMF loan agreement and all this thing.
All over the world.
Who is it?
The majority of the stuff that's at the store.
It's a big seed company that bought all the other seed companies. Monsanto. Ooh, if you look that up, that's a can of worms. And Bayer. Yeah.
Bayer Monsanto, yeah.
Don't let them take your cookies.
So does anyone have questions? Because I think I need to let her go as well. Anybody? Yes.
The heat, when you're storing it, you got to dry it.
Right.
The heat, at what degree would it lose viability?
So there's something called the 100 rule that if it's like 70%, if it's 70 degrees, it needs to be at 30% humidity. And it's safe for like 4 or 5 years. But the heat, if it gets over 95, then it starts to deteriorate. So that's why people will put it in the fridge or the freezer. But if you put a jar of seeds in the freezer, just when you take them out, don't open the jar until it reaches, what's it called? Room temperature.
You want to come out so that we can close the door.
So that it doesn't absorb all the moisture instantly.
To the retreat, we left the van doors open and stuff like that. See the lights? She's like, should be off.
No.
Turn off the lights.
No.
Then
that's just cooking it. Yeah. So not over 95.
Can you step outside? Sit out here, Papa.
Yeah, even dehydrated, you would just want to put it on air and not on dehydrate. Yeah.
Definitely not.
95 is okay. Above that is questionable. I mean, you could try it and see. Take notes and share them with us, please. So they store them like in the clay pots and the jars in cool places. If you get it down
In the ground or something like that?
you could do it in the ground, but if you get the humidity down to a certain, I mean, you can get it down to like 20%. And with things that they're doing when they put the dried clay in there, that just keeps absorbing the humidity, because it's not just the temperature, but also the humidity and the moisture that it's absorbing. But yeah, they've been saving seeds since time. And so there's rules, and then there's reality.
And part of the wisdom of storing things in clay, again, the clay will absorb the moisture inside, but it also keeps things cool. When we were in Sudan, there was Zirs, which is a clay container for people to drink water, like free water. And that water, even though it was like 100 degrees in nature, the water was like cold.
Always.
Because the clay like sweats, the moisture, and that the wind hitting it, even though there is no wind, it keeps the clay cool, right? So it was
that was amazing.
It was amazing because
again,
you would not expect to have like cool water
yeah,
from a clay pot.
Yeah. So well, once you get the tomato seeds and dry them out, they need to be dry. Yes. They can also have the ash, they can have the clay, all of the same things. So, okay. I'm going to turn it over.
Amy.
What's that? I'm turning it over to you.
do you have your computer?
I don't. No.
Thank you, guys. Oh, I'm sorry, baby.
You good? Grab your stuff.
Okay. Let me move out the way.
Excuse me. Are y'all on LinkedIn? Do you have your contact information?
I have cards. We're on Instagram.
So you got the
no.
Turn this off?
Yeah. I'll stay.
Yeah, okay, there you go. It just took a minute.
Let me just get my phone.
Get my phone.
Your phone's right there. Oh.
Are you done presenting?
I think so.
Okay. So you ready to be done?
It's not so scary anymore.
It's totally exactly.
Can I mic you up? I'm just gonna put in red here. And are you presenting by yourself or you?
Yep. I'm not doing anything over there.
So is the line for pets? We have a question here. Can the line be for pets?
The lime is for pets. Yeah.
Okay.
The lime and ornament.
What pets? Like insect pets? Okay.
Any more questions? Before I turn the mic off, I want to make sure I get you on the mic.
On the viability of those seeds after they're stored, because generation to generation, the seeds sometimes can be less viable. With this method of storing the seed, are they viable for generations to come? Like for second generation, third generation?
They would need to be
So here, again, I don't know if everybody's going to want one, so I don't want them to take it if they don't want it. You know what I mean? It's a lot of paper waste. Yes, I can. Yeah, let me see here.
long enough where you can brush them out again.
Yeah, not quite yet.
Okay. Or you give it.
Yeah. The buggies. I don't know where to go. That would be like the best place to be. I don't want to get in their way. Is it okay if I speak from here? Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. So my name is Amy Tallarico, and I am with an organic certifier. I have been involved in the organic industry since the law came out. The organic law came out in 2002. So I've been involved in one aspect or another. I've been an organic farmer, certified by a few different agencies in the state of Pennsylvania, the state of South Carolina, and Virginia, and then also in the Caribbean. I lived and farmed for a long time in St. Croix, on a tiny little island of St. Croix. I currently do not farm, so I'm sort of taking a break, but I've also worked with an organic certifier for over 20 years. I'm traveled around the country and did organic inspections, which if you're certified organic, that's part of the organic certification. You get a visit every year by somebody to look at your farm and look at your paperwork. So I don't know. I know there's maybe not a lot of farmers here, so I want to try to talk about things that either people have questions on specifically, or things that might be of interest. So just so you know a little bit of my background, I grew vegetables for many years. So that's my interest. And then also saving seed was something that right after I graduated college, I knew I wanted to be a farmer. I studied horticulture and I knew I wanted to be a farmer, but I didn't come from that background, didn't really know anything about it, but graduated college and in 2 months I rented a 10-acre farm. Didn't know what I was doing. So the first year was a lot of trial and error, and two of the things I wanted to bring up from that experience in my first year, first crop I grew was beans. And I didn't even know what I was doing. Like, I didn't know when to harvest them, right? When you grow your own vegetables, there's this peak time where you harvest, it tastes the best. So I learned from my neighbor who was doing this in a farming region. I learned from my neighbor, like, those aren't edible. You let them go beyond. So what I decided to do was save seed from them, right? So I started saving seeds sort of by accident. Another crop, I had built a little hoop house, like a plastic greenhouse. And I was growing lettuce, green, like all kinds of lettuces in there, to sort of get myself into the winter. And my lettuces went to seed. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I just happened to luck out that lettuces are self-pollinating, right? So you don't have to really worry about them crossing with anything. And also beans were. So I had, in my first year of farming, I didn't really have any sellable crops, but I had seed. And that sort of sparked my interest in seed saving. And so I've done a lot of work in this seed saving realm. So I'm very glad to be here. But I want to talk a little bit about organic certification. And one of the things I want to show you. So all this paper, this is the organic law. This is the organic certification, and the word organic and organic farming and processing is a federal program. I am not with the federal government. I work independently to administer the organic program. So anytime you see that organic seal, it's somebody like me working behind the scenes to work with the operation to help them get into compliance, to help them maintain certification, and we visit the actual operation once per year to make sure that things are going the way they say they're going. So again, I just wanted to point this out. This is the organic law. So a lot of thought has gone into this, for better or worse. It's not perfect, but it's constantly evolving, which is also fascinating. I've been in this industry for over 20 years, and the law has changed, and things have gotten better, a little bit more strict, a little bit more specific once we're seeing things in the industry that either aren't working or where we can improve. So I just wanted to point that out to you. The other thing, so this little packet, I have one for everybody if you're interested. This is just the crops and the livestock standards. So I just also wanted to point out, if you're getting certified for crops or livestock or both, it's actually not that bad. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about, to sort of come off of what Roxanne was talking about, is the organic seed law. So within this is a law that's what kind of seed can be used. So you all probably maybe know organic certification. As a general rule, you can't use synthetic fertilizers, pest control. I mean, there's a big long list, but that's sort of putting it all into a basket. Food can't be grown with chemicals. That's sort of it, synthetic chemicals. But one of the rules is there is a rule around seed, and that is organic seed. If you're certified organic seed must be used unless you can't find it in organic form. So right now what's happening is there's not enough organic seed. The supply is not meeting the demand. We have a lot of certified organic farmers. They have to use organic seed if it's available to them. If it's not, they have to go through a set of paperwork to say, we looked at 3 different places. Here's where we're looking. We didn't find it. And it can be for many reasons except for cost. So you can't say, well, organic seed was too expensive. But if it's not available in the quantity or the quality or the form, meaning like I'm growing sun gold tomatoes and that's all I'm growing because that's what my market is, and I can't find it in organic, then that's okay. So I just wanted to point that out, that there is a huge need for organic seed producers. And the Ira Wallace, I used to live and work there, at Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. There's actually her Southern Exposure Seed Exchange actually has a program that I did on one of my farms in Georgia, where they pay growers to grow seed. And you can just have a small space. You don't even have to have a farm. If you have a garden and you're willing to grow the crop that they need, and it works with what else you're growing in terms of isolation distances and all of that. So even if you're not like a large scale farmer, you can grow seed. You know, I mean, it's either one variety. I grew maybe 6 different varieties. I grew cotton and corn, pumpkins, cowpeas, and it was just a sideline of my farming operation, and I actually made a lot of money. But if you're certified organic, you then get that certified organic premium. From Southern Exposure Seed Exchange would do that. So that's sort of one thing. There's a need for organic seed, and that's based on the fact that there's a law written in the organic standards that requires organic farmers to use organic seed if they can find it. I would say the typical organic farm, like usually vegetable operations do a little bit better because they have these wonderful catalogs with all different seed varieties, but larger scale, like cotton, a lot of cotton's GMO anyway, but corn, wheat growers, you know, the small grains. Is anybody interested in livestock or just crop? You're interested in livestock? Okay, because so basically when you're certified organic for livestock, you also have to be certified for crops. It's required. And that's because organic animals either require pasture for cows or anything with a ruminant, or if you're doing chickens, they need to have outdoor access, and that outdoor area needs to be certified.
So would it be best to go for the animal certification so you could do both?
You have to have them together. So a lot of times livestock farmers will get their crop certified first, right? They'll get their crop certified first, and then their livestock can eat their certified organic pasture. Right. And there's also you can transition animals if they have 4 chambers, if they're ruminant. So you can't transition like a chicken. Right. But you can beef. Nope, you can't. I know. But you can buy day olds that are not certified organic and raise them organic. That's what I used to do. Right. I would get them in the mail. Right. And then I would feed them organic feed, and then I would have organic eggs. What? Year old. Sorry. Like day old. Yes. Day old. You know, like the little peeps. They'll send them to you in the mail. Like in a box.
If you bought them from other farmers so that they were that young. Around here, you can just get chickens from other folks that
right.
But you can't get them from that source. You would have to get them from an organic source.
No, they don't have to be organic. They have to be day olds. They have to be only 1 day old. They have to be managed organically from the first day of life. Yeah. So if you like your neighbors producing chicks or something like that, just have them write on the invoice like day old.
So the question always comes up is for those who are considering organic crops.
Yeah. Yes.
And what some of the stuff
That's livestock.
would be helpful.
You want livestock?
Some of the information you said may offset that cost.
Yes.
Has the cost changed any in becoming certified organic?
So the cost of organic certification ranges like with certifiers, but everybody who's certified organic, no matter who you get certified by, there's a cost share program, which is currently at, you either get, and that's from the federal government, they'll give you 75% back or up to $750 of your certification fees. Some certifiers, they say like a crop operation can range anywhere from $400 to $1,000.
Is that based on how much land?
Well, no, it's not based on the amount of land. So your first year, you're guaranteed that it's probably going to be in that lower category. It's usually they're on a sliding scale based on then in future years, once you're certified, gross organic sales. So say, like usually, I don't know what our tier, but all this information is in there. There's info about the cost share program. There's information about the certification agency I work for, their fee structure. Did you want one of these? Are you interested? Is crop and livestock? Sure.
With the FSA providing $50 or 75% is the NRCS.
Is anybody else interested in a certification packet?
First year.
Yep. Okay, hold on.
$250. So the whole thing for that first year.
I get one for my grandson.
Sure. Okay, let me go over here and grab more.
Okay.
Oh, did I give them all away? Before, I will not forget you because
Okay.
I just threw more in my car. Do you want livestock too?
Yeah.
Yes. Here's livestock. The crops ones I got. I might have to go back over to my. And here is a copy of just the crops and livestock standards. Hi, how are you? I'm gonna run to my car and get more packets.
Is that the last one of those?
What? No, go ahead. That's just the standards. So hold on for a second. I'm gonna go to my car.
Hey, Miss Jennifer, you're going to be talking now. I got the mic you up.
You know, I'm finished. I think I'm finished. I think so.
Okay.
I was just trying to catch
But I don't want, because the video will just show your mouth moving there.
Okay, sorry. Hey, you need to do this too.
I need to do which one?
Did you want? Are you interested in organic crop certification?
Does one shirt have its own inspection?
We do. Yes, we have our own. So we don't.
Encompass with the certification costs for inspection.
Yeah. So one cert, that's included. A lot of certifiers, it's not. But our inspection fees are included in our certification fee. We're an international company, but we have an office in Nebraska and we have one in India. So I live in Florida and I'm just remote employee, but we certify all over. We're international. So some certifiers, they have like particular regions that they certify in. It's gotten better in like the last 10 years where most certifiers, like 20 some years. Yeah, like pretty early on.
But out of the Midwest, we said.
Yeah, they're out of the Midwest. Yeah, but we have, sorry, I'll be right with you. Oh, you want one? Here you go. I'm sorry, tell me your question again.
Just asking, originated out of the Midwest.
Yes, so we have cert specialists like the work I do and inspectors all over. So it's not like we're going to send, you might, like an inspector, we're not going to send them to you if they only have experience in wheat growing, right? We try to match them up. Right. A lot of the inspectors, like we have in-house ones and then we have like what contract, yeah, depending on like if the operation's really specific I've been doing this work for 20 years and I've done it all, I feel like. Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah. We certify a lot of processors. Again, if you're shopping around for a certifier, these are really good questions because you want it to be.
So y'all don't grow with the line like
You want them to know you. You know what I mean? It saves time and effort and usually money along the way.
The standards are the standards.
Right. Right. But here's the thing. Certifiers interpret them differently. Yeah. So you will see within, we have all the same law, but we write policies. Every certifier has policies. So
is that all in here?
yes, so like we have a crop rotation policy in there, for example, and it's because we needed to do that. And so we may interpret, some certifiers don't go by that, even though it's sort of industry approved.
They don't go by that.
Right. They're lenient, you know.
NRCS that piggybacks on the cost share for transition or something.
Yes. Uh-huh.
NRCS.
Yes.
There's an NRCS office in this town. And then this project she's talking about sounds like they piggyback with it.
Yeah, so there's a lot happening with organic transition, and there's a paper in there. It's like OTI, Organic Transition Initiative, and it came out through the USDA. And I think under that are all these things we're seeing with NRCS and transition verification programs.
You know, USDA, yeah, they're the government.
Federal.
But somebody has pushed that through USDA. They don't come up with it themselves. There's an organization that's...
It might be the National Organic Program, which is, you know...
I think OFR, if you know them.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, maybe.
From years ago.
Do you, sir, I don't know if we're done. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? There's that.
They will help. She'll have guide you for free on the application. They'll help with your house.
What's that? Is it special?
No, but you need to say it so everybody will know what it is.
When you said that, I was like, because I lived in the Caribbean, right? And I'm like, I know. I was like, my mouth started to water because it's like that tangy.
The cohort thing I did, my final project was on sorrel, and now I want to apply for the Southern Sare.
Oh, cool! Yeah.
There's so much. So we've been eating the leaves, the seeds,
I think so good, and they grow good.
We're not using it like that.
No, we're not. And you eat the leaves, right? Like we eat my dad grows it and we put it in our salad. Right? So it's so good. Seeds that I saved myself. If you want some of those but don't want the whole package, there is seed packets here with markers, so you could make your own packet full. But just note, they are old. So you might want to test germination first. I don't know if you guys know how to do that, but you can do it pretty easy. You just take right here, a paper towel. You take a paper towel, right? And you line up, count them, I don't know, 10 or 12 or 20. And then you fold it and wet it, put it in a plastic bag and test the germination. So say 2 out of 10 germinate. You have 20% germination. So if you're seeding them in your garden, it would mean to seed them really heavy so that you're maybe assured. So that's the only caveat with these is that you might not have the best germination, but I would be happy to share because there's a lot. There's a lot of different varieties. So they're by family, generally speaking. If you can sort of try to keep them in the bags, do that, but don't worry about it too much. So please help yourself. There's more beads here. Yeah. Yes.
Take your mic.
Are you gonna edit that? He's like,
yeah, it'll be edited. Cause I know you were talking and everything.
Right. Ran over to my car.
I almost didn't make it.